Reduce all the plastic bags. Reduce all the metal scraps. Reduce all the carbon gas. Keep the air free from your pollution. Yeah. From your pollution.
Tumekuwa viziwi, tumeziba masikio, tuwezi sikia. Tumeambiwa plastic ni toxic, inaharibu mazingira. Ikiblock drainage mahali fulani, mwananchi unaumia. So painful, mtoto anaweza ikula ikamwafect pia. Na kwa sea, fish zina die, they can move, they can breathe. Na kwa sea, fish zina die, they can move, they can breathe.
And I can't breathe from all the smoke that is choking me. And I can't breathe from all the plastic in the deepest sea. Reduce all the plastic bags. Reduce all the metal scraps. Reduce all the carbon gas. Keep the air free from your pollution. Yeah. From your pollution.
Check it up. T-boy. Check it, okay. Silent killer con hair kuliko presenter. Ni disease noma sana bila kinga tutaipenda. Kama movie ni tutake action. Kablija tutenda protector ni sisi but wenye kampuni ndo upewa tenda. So generation ya past kwa dog imekuwa sumu. The future generation nashindwa kama itadumu juu wengi washaumia na mapavu hayana nguvu. Na venye life inasonga donita baki bila mutu. Binadamu ni kamea sosi anafaa mbolea. Na huyo mtoto ndia grosi tunafaa kumlea. Kwa nature kiafrika utamaduni mebobea. Na ile maji mababu walikunywa si walishakojolea.
And I can't breathe from all the smoke that is choking me. And I can't breathe from all the plastic in the deepest sea. Reduce all the plastic bags. Reduce all the metal scraps. Reduce all the carbon gas. Keep the air free from your pollution. Yeah. From your pollution. Yeah.
It's the people before profit. Our environment we gonna benefit. We have to fight this fight together. Tuweze pata kweli 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 life better. Tuweze change from capitalist. Kweli sisi huku tushakuwa kweli mabist. We so selfish hatujali mafish. Tutatake action tuwache hizo matweet. Tuweze linda coast na ipenda. Wakishatupa sisi tuna return to sender. Tuweze linda cause na ipenda. Wakishatupa sisi tuna return to sender.
And I can't breathe from all the smoke that is choking me. And I can't breathe from all the plastic in the deepest sea. Reduce all the plastic bags. Reduce all the metal scraps. Reduce all the carbon gas. Keep the air free from your pollution. Yeah. From your pollution. Yeah.
Hello to everyone around the world. And I'm Ellen Roscom. I'm the coordinator of the Global Health Platform in the Global Health Center here at the Geneva Graduate Institute. And today is our 4th day of events of Global Health Week. So thank you all for coming and being here. and happy that you could see the plastics monster. And we have decided, because everybody gets tired by Wednesday of Health Week, so we wanted to make this pretty upbeat and different and creative and musical, and well, you've just had the music part, so that's done. And well, you'll see, so stay and you'll see, it's all a surprise. We at the Global Health Center, we are absolutely delighted to have co-organized and curated this event together with Tess, the Forum on Trade and Environment and the Sustainable Development Goals, and with the University of Portsmouth Revolutions Plastics Institute. So there's a name for you. And if you think how hard it is to get your whole family to agree on what they want to have for dinner, try and imagine how hard it is to get more than 100 countries who all have money in the game, skin in the game, to agree on a multilateral treaty that will be binding on plastics. And this treaty is also a first coming from UN Environment Program that has a big focus on health. The last one that had a smaller piece focused on health was the Minamata Convention on Mercury, and the health component was put over pretty much to the World Health Organization to implement, to strengthen ministries of health. This time around, it's different. I think there's been a lot of learning. With every multilateral treaty negotiation, there's always learning. And imagine you are a country whose economy relies a lot on fossil fuel development and selling oil, and plastics are made from oil, and you don't want to be limited on how much plastic you can produce in plastic bags and bottles and blah, blah, blah. And these are the really, really tough kind of questions that countries have to come together and negotiate. And in a really short time, in the scope of treaties, the plastics treaty that is close to finalization, so we'll call it today the Future Plastics Treaty, has been quite fast and come together with an amazing amount of agreement after lots of struggles. So today's event will be a panel discussion. First, we'll have Maria Nera, from WHO, who will be online to kind of set the stage and the background for us. And then we'll have a panel discussion and two interactive activities with you, including you online people, after that. And then another participatory event during the reception upstairs after. So please don't disappear, come up and join that activity. I'd like to now introduce to you Dr. Jane Munn, from the Managing Director and Chief Scientific Officer of the Food Packaging Forum, who has joined us from Zurich. So enjoy the event, Jane.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and a very warm welcome from me as well. And I also would like to welcome the people that are joining us online. Welcome to this event today. There will be a Mentimeter interaction, so have your phones ready, please, once the code comes up. But before we go to that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Maria Nera, who's the Director of the Department of Environment, Climate Change and Health at the World Health Organization here in Geneva. And Maria is joining us online. So welcome, Maria.
Can you see me?
Almost. I think you're coming on.
Is to make some expectations, you know?
You're still a black box, Maria, but we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. It's not bad sometimes to be a black box. The important is there.
I agree. Why don't you go ahead, and we hope that we can figure out how to get you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, and again, all the events organized at the campus are super excited and always on the topics of relevance in terms of public health. So I'm very pleased to join you today, even if it's from another office, because as you know, the global health is being discussed these days in a very intense way, and it's very exciting. Let me now maybe go with a talking, I mean, an important point that I think will summarize the message from WHO. Human health must be central to the plastic treaty. So this is our message. I think if we take into consideration the health of the people and the impacts that the plastic is having in our health, that could be the core focus of the treaty, and maybe even a big push to motivate countries to be very ambitious on adopting the treaty. As you know, plastic poses risk to human health, and is that happening across the entire life cycle. It's just from destruction to the production, and then use and disposal. We are very much concerned as well about the waste of all of this plastic that are around us. Of course, plastics are not just an environmental concern, and congratulations on this wonderful video and the beauty of what you managed to do with all of this horrible waste, transforming on art and in songs and music, but the problem remained there. So we really, as WHO, we strongly advocate for the health dimensions of this plastic pollution and to be fully integrated into the treaty. As I mentioned, the plastics are representing a risk because they have chemicals inside. They represent a risk as well from a physical point of view, and of course from a microbiology point of view, it represents as well a risk for our health. And this is why we make sure that if we are going to upstream interventions, means reducing the unnecessary plastic production, especially in those single-use plastics. I was a couple of years ago in Rwanda, in Kigali, and I was really very happy to see that there is no plastic, nowhere, no single-use plastics, and they are still doing very well on business in the different souvenirs, shops and others. So life without certain type of plastics is possible. As you know as well, the health sector, we can contribute to reduce the plastic use. We have this big initiative on reducing the 5% of the GHG emissions, and therefore by decarbonizing the health sector, one of the immediate benefits will be to reduce this plastic use at the health system. And I'm sure that you are all aware of the platform called Attach, which is helping countries to integrate the climate resilient, environmental sustainability, and low carbon health system. This is a contribution that we are very happy to make, and that is very rewarding as well for the health professionals, that they see this as a very concrete contribution. Plastics are around 30 to 50% of healthcare waste, and global analysis of healthcare waste in the context of COVID. You will remember that we looked at it in that report, and we realized that 50% of what was procured during the COVID-19 time, it was probably unnecessary and not used, and you still have a problem with that waste that you need to do something about it. So the public health community can contribute enormously to this treaty development and implementation. We have resolutions, we have some on the, the SICAM, we have bringing this issue to the Ministers of Health, and we want to be part of this process on the plastic treaty. I could go very long on that, what is our mandate and what are the potential risks, but I think the more critical message is that here in Geneva at the moment, at the World Health Assembly, we have ministers of health. And sometimes ministers of health don't realize that something like a plastic treaty is something that will be part of their functions, their mandate, and they have a role to play. And it's our responsibility to make sure that they feel part of this plastic treaty, they understand the health concerns, they contribute to this international cooperation and involvement, and WHO will be through our health experts and through all the partnership contributing to all of that. So we need to make sure that we need a good, we don't want, this is an important point, we don't think a blanket exception for medical products is needed. This will probably undermine initiatives to reduce plastic pollution and waste from the health sector. So with all of that, just to tell you that WHO remains very committed, is very happy to be part of this, and of course we will let you know what is happening at the Assembly, where I need to go back immediately. So thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you the Geneva Graduate Institute and the Global Health Center for always having these very stimulating discussions and dialogues, very critical for public health. And back to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Maria. Before we let you go, can I just ask, you mentioned a platform, and the audio is a little bit challenging here. Could you just repeat the name, please, that people know where they can find that information?
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the question. It allows me to give a lot of visibility to attach. It's a very nice name. In French, attach means putting things together, no? The acronym stands for Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate Change and Health. And this is a platform to make sure that our health systems will be environmentally sustainable. We will reduce our carbon footprint. And of course, we will create better conditions for climate resilience in our health systems. So part of that is to decarbonize the health system. And one of the big pieces of the decarbonization goes to the procurement and supplies. And most of those supplies and procurement, as you know, the plastic is always part.
Yeah, single-use plastic, yeah, exactly. Great, so that is ATACH, is that correct? Is that how it's spelled?
ATACH, yes.
Wonderful, okay.
Wonderful.
So that's where you will find that information. And we heard that you don't want any blanket exemptions for the healthcare sector. I think that's a call that's been echoed by several other stakeholders as well. So Maria, thank you so much for your time. And let's give Maria a round of applause, please. We'll let you get back to speaking with the Ministers of Health and telling them how important the Plastics Treaty is. Okay, great. And now I would like to ask if we could get the QR code up on the slides, please. So now comes the time for your phones. This is a Menti question where we will ask you for 3 words that come to mind when you think of human health and plastics. Okay, just punch in your 3 words. It's a free association game, so to say. It's not working?
Waiting for presenter.
Okay. Who can help me with that?
Okay.
Is it good? Yeah. Great. I started sweating a bit when you... I have no clue how it works. Okay, good. So we can see things coming up. Maybe I need to stand up so I don't have to twist my neck too much. I'm not a giraffe. Chemicals, human health and plastics. Well, that would have been one of mine. Microplastics, yes, full life cycle, easy cancer. Crinkly brain, cheap food sector unknown. Okay, you guys are creative. Good. I hope the people online are also participating. If you join this a little bit later, look at the top of the screen. There's a code up there. And if you go to menti.com, type in the code, you will be able to participate in this exercise. Endocrine disruption. Who knows what endocrine disruption is in this room? Oh, good. You're quite an educated audience. Okay. Endocrine disruptors are chemicals that hack the hormone system. Endocrine system, toxins, lifelong protection, danger, crinkly. I really, really want to ask the person who put crinkly in, because I don't really understand that association. Anyone want to offer? No? Okay, maybe we'll get to that later. Good. Okay. So I think this gives us a good flavor of the diversity of this topic, but a few things are standing out quite clearly. Microplastics, chemicals, and cancer, I think, and toxic, of course. Good, so those are important keywords. We may hear about those aspects and additional topics as well from our next guest, who is actually a panelist, and he's with us, but virtually. Joining us from the Philippines is Albert Magalang, who's the Chief Environmental Management Specialist climate change service at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in the government of the Philippines. And Albert, if you are there, I would like to invite you to address your comments regarding what you expect and what you need from the Plastics Treaty, and also if you would like to comment on how important are non-financial measures of implementation for this treaty. Obviously the financial side is a big topic, a hot potato, but there will also be non-financial means of implementation. So Albert, I hope you can hear us. Welcome, and the floor is yours. Maybe we can see him as well. Let's see. It'll be a surprise if we can see him and hear him. And I can see that you are muted, Albert, so maybe if you can unmute yourself. There you are. Okay, we can see you. Excellent. Hello, Albert.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening to the Philippines.
Yes. Hi. Oh, okay, if I may start with my intervention. Okay, so most of my statements will be called out from the positions which the Philippines has presented in several INC meetings. In fact, we would like to emphasize the importance of protecting human health as we address the plastic crisis and opportunities. So, and also, we would like to emphasize that the Philippines would always support measures to avoid health risk through the elimination of chemicals, as mentioned in the Menti inputs, elimination of chemicals of concern in plastics through the establishment of the clearer criteria that will ensure that plastics throughout their life cycle are safe to human health and environment. So this Philippine position was based on the result of stakeholder consultation, which the ministry or the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and has conducted, and also the UNE Resolution 5/14, which would reaffirm the importance of preventing the risks to human health and well-being and of the environment due to pollution. So most of us have already are quite knowledgeable on the latest scientific report that identified over 16,000 chemicals that are added to plastics, and only I think 980 hazardous chemicals are regulated by international treaties such as the Stockholm Convention, while the other additional 4,200 chemicals are not globally regulated. It just the reports would show us that chemicals are really present in plastic products, posing hazards such as causing, of course, cancers, mutations, genetic mutations, or harm to the reproductive system. So I know for a fact that the health sector is aware that about 10,000 chemicals are used in plastics, and they don't have any hazard data. So we really have to be conscious of this, because as currently being discussed by the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, possible criteria for identifying chemicals of concern could include the hazard criteria already in the Stockholm Convention, of which the Philippines is a party, namely looking at the point of that should be highlighted, like the persistence, the bioaccumulation, mobility, and toxicity as well. So, in particular, the Philippines sees that the health sector should push for the adoption of toxicity criteria that could be based in part on the hazard traits already defined in the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, which is widely accepted. So the GHS criteria, or the globally harmonized system criteria, is very significant, as this would include um, determination of the carcinogenicity level, mutagenicity, as well as the the toxicity to the reproductive system. Moreover, since some plastic additives are endocrine disruptors, and more than 100 countries, including the Philippines, acknowledge the need for global policy action on endocrine disruption. So the Philippine positions the addition of endocrine disruption as a hazard criterion. So
Now we lost.
embodied in the Constitution, the state has a paramount obligation to protect the right to health of the people and the right to a balanced and healthful ecology. So furthermore, in closing, we need a global plastics treaty that identifies chemicals and polymers of concern that should take advantage of research, testing, and validation by independent international experts, which are tasked with reviewing and recommending updates on the latest scientific evidence. Importantly, a globally harmonized list and a phase-out timetable would create a level playing field for plastics and petrochemical industries. Opportunities for innovation and redesign would be there, as redesigning of products using that would use safer chemical additives. So also consideration of national circumstances and capabilities are as advocated by the Philippines and other developing countries could mean time-bound exemptions, financial assistance, technology access, and capacity building to allow Philippine industries to have more time to shift to safer plastics. So for now, that's my intervention, and I would be glad to be to come back for any questions that the participants would like to raise. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you so much, Albert. Round of applause, please, for Albert. Thank you. And we could hear you very well. There were some interruptions. At some stage, your video stream disappeared, but we could hear you very well. And you made your point quite clearly. I also liked what you mentioned, the need for global action on endocrine disrupting chemicals under the GHS, the globally harmonized system. Maybe that's not known to everyone, but that is actually not hosted under WHO, even though you would think it should be, but it's under the ILO. The globally harmonized system. So that could be a topic for another panel, but that's definitely an important, important subject, the GHS. Good. So now we come back to the room and we're going to go hyper-local because we have Andrea Zbinden here, who is a senior policy advisor and the national focal point for the UNEP and also for the INC on plastic pollution. She's with the Swiss Federal Office for the Environment here in Switzerland, and in English we abbreviate that to FÖHN, which is funny because Föhn in German means hair dryer. So Andrea, my question to you, and welcome to the panel discussion. From the point of Switzerland, should human health be an objective in the Plastics Treaty? And if yes, I'm guessing yes, why? And what needs to be done and how should it be done? So over to you, Andrea, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Jane, for the question. And it's a real pleasure being here today in Geneva. So I'm based in Bern, so nice to travel to Geneva also. And of course, to contribute to this highly relevant discussion from a government perspective. And thank you, Jane, that you have already answered my question, or the question to me, whether health should be one of the objectives of the Future Plastics Treaty. And I just want to start with the video that we have seen before. I think sometimes you don't need a lot of words explaining why it's important to tackle and to address a global topic. Sometimes it's just, everything is said by watching a movie that we have seen before. I think that was quite impressive. And it shows that we really need to do something now. That just as a start. I think also, as Maria pointed out clearly, plastics pose risks to human health at every stage of their life cycle. So therefore, I agree, and also to answer your question, protecting people from these harmful impacts must be a core objective of the Future Plastics Treaty. And to achieve this, we need an integrated approach throughout the treaty obligations. And the involvement, of course, and active engagement of the health community will be critical to this effort. And I think that's really why discussions and exchanges we have today here in this room is so important, bringing together different stakeholders across different sectors. So thank you very much for organizing today's event. Let me now briefly reflect on one of the core elements Switzerland believes will contribute concretely to the protection of human health. And that's the need for an effective article on plastic products and chemicals of concern in plastic products in the Future Plastics Treaty. And yeah, we have seen it in the Menti exercise. Chemicals was under the top 3 issues and topics that were raised. So why is it so important? First, there is clear and growing scientific evidence. Chemicals of concern in plastic products pose serious health and environmental risks across the full life cycle of plastics. And if we truly want to protect human health, addressing these chemicals in the plastics treaty is not optional, it's really essential. And second, we face a major challenge, that's the lack of transparency across the plastics value chain, as clearly stated and pointed out by my colleague Albert from the Philippines. And without global harmonized rules on chemical contents, we will continue to see fragmented approaches. And this will make it difficult for governments and businesses to effectively address, manage, or limit the health risks. And just my personal view on this, I want to know actually what is in the plastic product that I'm using every day. And I think you would also like to know that. So, and third, and importantly, and I'm repeating that again and again, this treaty is not about banning all plastics. It's not that, but it's about making the plastics and the plastic products we use safer and more sustainable. And if designed well, this treaty can support innovation and unlock opportunities for a cleaner, safer, and more circular plastics economy. And that's also very important. The medical sector also showcased that it is ready actually to do its part. And that's also a really important statement. And we see already many positive examples of hospitals around the world that have been able to reduce their use of plastic products. And we heard before from WHO and also from others, no blanket exception is needed for the healthcare sector. So what does this mean in practical terms for the treaty now? And just a question to the audience, I can't ask the online participants, but to you, who joined INC5 in Busan? Who was there? Okay, still a few. Okay, great. Hope to see you then also in Geneva, of course, in August. So at INC 5, for those who were not there, a broad coalition of 94 countries made it clear to the Mexico statement that the Article 3 on plastic products and chemicals in the instrument text must contain a clear, legally binding obligation to phase out the most harmful plastic products and chemicals of concern in plastic products. This was really a strong signal. And to build on that momentum, an informal group of countries from all UN regions, call it by Mexico and Switzerland, is continuing the work, and we are further or try to develop the text proposal for Article 3. And I would like to highlight some of the key elements of an effective Article 3 that we believe this is really crucial to see in a treaty text. So we see actually a two-tier approach with a global obligation for all parties and a control measure encouraging national action as an effective way to reduce and eliminate problematic plastic products, including those containing chemicals of concern or harmful chemicals. At the global level, the treaty should establish an obligation to phase out the most problematic and harmful plastic products and chemicals of concern in plastic products. And these products should be included in a global list and be restricted. As a starting point, we also think that the treaty should include a first global list to already restrict specific plastic products and chemicals of concern in plastic products that have been regulated in many, many countries around the globe, or for which where relevant ecological and cost-effective alternatives exist. Such a global list will help to reduce regulatory fragmentation, provide clarity for businesses, and of course, most importantly, better protect people, in particular, those most exposed. And I think we also heard it before, so science is an important issue, and science also evolves. So we see in the medical field, the adverse impact of plastics on human health is multifaceted. And that's why the treaty must also include a mechanism to regularly update the list based on the latest science and developments. While every effort, of course, should be made to reach consensus, it is important to establish a clear procedure for decision-making to ensure the list can be updated effectively. This ensures the treaty can respond to new scientific findings and developments. At the same time, complementing global action with measures at the national level is really essential from our point of view. In addition to the global list, each party needs to identify problematic plastic products and chemicals of concern in plastic products within their own national context. And this also allows countries to target products that contribute to plastic pollution or impede circularity in their country. So an effective Article 3 can further provide flexibility and allow for time-bound exemptions or set phase-out dates to allow more time for implementation, right? We see such kind of mechanisms in other MEAs, like the Stockholm Convention, for example, so it's nothing new, but it really provides options for countries to have more time for the implementation. This way, the treaty can ensure globally harmonized rules while considering national circumstances. For us, an effective Article 3 will first, of course, protect human health and the environment from plastic pollution, but also enhance a circular plastics economy. With that, of course, we are still very much engaged in the INC process, and Switzerland is, of course, very excited to host the next INC in August, and we will do our best to create an enabling environment that will allow a successful conclusion of the negotiations and to ensure that we have an effective plastics treaty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Yeah, please. That was very clear and very compelling. And I guess if anyone has specific questions, especially if you're from a member state, I'm sure Andrea will be happy to answer. And we also have a round of Q&A later where you can also raise your questions. But thank you so much for that. Very clear. National action complemented by globally binding measures. Excellent. Now I would like to welcome Giulia Carlini on stage here. She's manager and senior attorney on the environmental health program at the Center for International Environmental Law. And Giulia and I have in common with Andrea that we're all based in Switzerland, so I guess the next INC we will do without jet lag, which is fantastic, right? Good. Okay. But Giulia, you are an observer in this process, and you represent the perspective of civil society here on our panel. So what do you expect from the treaty? What are key elements, and how do we make it effective in its implementation?
Thank you so much, Jane, for the welcoming, and Tess and the rest of the organizers for this event, very timely during WHA. And with the Center for International Environmental Law, CIEL, I've been involved in the negotiations of the Plastics Treaty as an observer, so non-party actor, even before the mandate was created. And what I've seen with this process and also other processes of conventions that already exist, that have been mentioned, like the Stockholm Convention by both Andrea and Albert before, is that civil society is really key to the implementation of these treaties, of these obligations. And it's almost the conscience of them. It carries them because there's real care about the protection of environment and health and preserving and protecting the objectives of these existing treaties and hopefully the future one. And there's also institutional memory because some of the stakeholders, the civil society, have been there from the negotiation stage and have also been shaping what the conventions are or could be. And to give you a concrete example, the mandate for the Plastics Treaty mentions a full life cycle approach, and that comes from UN Environment Assembly resolution in 2022. With CIEL and partners, we published a report highlighting the health impact of plastic across each stage of its life cycle already in early 2019. And a lot of other NGOs have been contributing to highlight the health impact of plastic already for years, and also the climate impact. So there's a lot of contribution that highlight what are the real impact experiences, data coming from civil society. But there, if you allow me, I want to do a little premise actually about civil society and how we talk about it and how we participate in these intergovernmental spaces and international organizations. Because often we are all crammed together under the big umbrella of being non-state actors or observers or stakeholders, as if we were all the same. But I would want to make a difference between the stakeholders and those who have economic and vested interest at stake, and sometimes don't even want to see this treaty from happening, or if they exist, they're trying to delay their implementation. And those right holders and public interest organizations and indigenous peoples and communities from the ground, and those who represent communities and peoples who are in a vulnerable situation, scientists who are independent. So cramming all of them together with those who have vested interest does a disservice to those who really are there for the public interest, to protect public health, and don't have the same resources, the same lobby capacity, and are not there for the same reasons. And secondly, thinking of the implementation of the future plastics treaty, because we do want to see a plastics treaty, I want to say also that we shouldn't take for granted the presence and support of those civil society and right holders of the second group I'm referring to, just for any plastics treaty that will be negotiated. But the plastics treaty needs to be fit for purpose and deliver on the promises of its mandate to really end plastic pollution. And so not any word on paper will be worth putting the limited resources for its implementation from the civil society and right holders. And so if the text will have legally binding global obligations, like the one I've heard mentioned, that can really deliver, can protect human health by banning toxic chemicals, by reducing plastic production, there will be worth it. But if not, we might not see the same engagement that we're seeing now in the negotiation from civil society. And I would like to give you some concrete examples of also what I've seen with the existing treaties, like the Stockholm Convention and its sisters or cousins, how we call maybe the group of the conventions on chemicals and waste that are existing, the BRS, Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, who actually met in Geneva a couple of weeks ago for the Conference of the Parties. And there, I've seen how across the years, and what I hear is even from the negotiation, the participation of civil society and right holders has been overall quite welcomed by member states. I've seen, even if it's not perfect, a good collaboration, good participation, respect, where I've seen member state welcoming the input, the expertise, the experience coming from data from the ground, impact on where chemicals are found or waste are shipped, and really have seen how civil society has helped this convention being alive and being protected and being strengthened. And as a concrete example, I want to mention the story of Semia Garbi, who won the Goldman Environmental Prize this year, which is a sort of Nobel Prize for the environment. And I invite you to later look at the video of her story if you haven't seen it yet. Semia is from Tunisia, working for an NGO as a scientist and educator on the toxics and plastics and waste. And when a few years ago, Tunisia received a shipment of waste that was, in theory, sent for recycling, but in practice it was illegal shipment of waste. It was not recyclable. It was a mix of dumped waste there from a European country. She helped raise awareness on this, collaborated with the local authorities, brought it up at the national level, had even the UN Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights come and make a visit to Tunisia to highlight this scandal, until, long story short, it was brought up to also the international level, and Italy eventually, who was the country from which the shipment was sent, had to take it back. And this is from national work, regional, international, and also awareness of the treaty. And it's a success story that is amazing to share. And I'm so glad to have people like Semia who are engaged in these negotiations, in this protection of the existing treaties and their implementation. But behind success stories, there are also challenges, and I want to mention quickly two challenges that I think are common to the existing conventions that I've seen in place, and also in the ongoing negotiation for the plastics treaty. And the first is the issue of resources. Resources are needed for the implementation of the treaties. They're needed for civil society, for almost everybody, although there are some actors who have lots of more resources, and there I also wonder, where is the implementation of the polluter pays principle, where a lot of resources are spent from the public taxpayer money to deal with the pollution and the negative externalities, and there, while others are profiting from extraction of fossil fuels and selling plastic products without paying their fair share of being responsible or accountable. And my last point is about the issue of conflict of interest, and goes back to my initial distinction of stakeholders and those with vested interest versus the right holders. And there, I think you can really learn from the WHO and the example from the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, where we can see that as an example of dealing with vested interests, and how there can be guidance also for the national level of how to protect a convention from that type of interest. And if there's actually people in the audience who have that experience, I would really welcome to hear how we can learn from that in the environmental spaces and in the plastics treaty. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. Let's give her a round of applause. Those were very clear comments, very easy to follow. I think what I take away mostly is that civil society is needed to deliver the treaty's implementation in an effective way, but not at any price. So to the negotiators here in the room, looking at you, Andrea, and others, make sure that, that the civil society people are happy so that they can help implement. I guess that's the takeaway, right? To put it very bluntly, I can do that. Okay, good. So now we come to our second, bless you, interactive activity, which is called Reverse Q&A. And so I've never done this. I hope I'm going to do it right. I'm looking at Cressida here, who I think has crafted this. If it doesn't work, then we'll give you feedback, but I'm sure it will work. So this is about asking experts in the audience questions. So I'm sure all of you are experts here, because who would come here on a Wednesday afternoon if they're not passionate and keen about this topic? So I'm going to say you're all experts, but we have two very special experts in the room that I would like to hand the microphone to, and we'll start with Kate Robertson here. Ms. Robertson is from the World Health Organization, and she is definitely one of the plastic treaty experts, because I think I've seen you at all INCs. She's right there. Would you please introduce yourself with your name? And my question to you, Ms. Robertson, is what are the contributions WHO can make to support the implementation phase of the Plastics Treaty?
Thanks very much, Jane, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to this expert audience. And thanks also to the presenters on the panel. I think there's been a lot of really useful and clear kind of points raised already. So in relation to your question, in essence, WHO, there are a number of different ways in which WHO could potentially support member states in the implementation of the Plastics Treaty that would make the best use of WHO's mandate, its convening powers, its existing technical resources and experience in matters that relate to health, and also its global and regional technical and scientific networks. So there's a number of ways that I'd like to go through and point out that WHO could actually provide some useful support for implementation. So the first is in analysing the state of the science from time to time in relation to health risks and impacts related to plastic pollution. The second is in the provision of technical support for the assessment of potentially harmful chemicals, plastic polymers and plastic products, which could be done through connection with existing WHO experts and networks, and also through the experience of WHO itself in risk assessments of harmful chemicals. The third is to make use of WHO's extensive experience in scientific, technical and policy areas that are related to health, in order to provide guidance. And much of this guidance already exists, and other sort of initiatives and mechanisms that are already in place. So for example, just in relation to evaluation of health risks and health benefits, just to make use of WHO's very, very broad and long-standing experience in that way. The second is in relation to best practice in the selection, procurement, maintenance and use of health products. Related to that, the disposal of healthcare waste, and also, as Maria has mentioned in her opening remarks, the reduction of plastic waste and pollution in healthcare sectors and also in healthcare supply chains. Another is in food packaging and labelling, coming out of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. And also, as Julia has also mentioned, in relation to identification and management of conflict of interest. There are colleagues in the audience from the FCTC Secretariat who can talk more about the experience under that treaty. But from the WHO experience as well, even in the use of technical committees and engagement of experts, there's a very, very clear, transparent process for the identification and management of conflicts of interest and potential vested interests, which is used in a way for WHO in order to ensure transparency around the products that WHO produces and also trust in those products. The fourth is technical support for development of technical specifications and standards for health products. There are a number of existing mechanisms that are very well established in the health context. So like the essential medicines list, like the processes for setting technical specifications and standards for medical devices and for health products. As Maria mentioned, WHO doesn't support a blanket exemption for the health sector under the Plastics Treaty, but what we have consistently maintained is the need for special consideration for health products. So, for example, where there's a plan to phase out or to ban certain polymers that may be used in medical or health products, so medicines and medical products, what we would propose is that prioritisation remains in relation to ensuring that there's affordable access to those products to ensure that healthcare can be provided, so that this sort of guidance could assist in making those types of decisions under the treaty, and making sure that products aren't phased out where they're necessary and until sort of feasible and clinically appropriate alternatives exist. And finally, in that regard, to foster and promote innovation and circularity for health products. The final point that I would like to raise is also that WHO can provide technical support in the collection and reporting of health-related data, including human biomonitoring data, which is important to build information on health risks and impacts from plastic pollution. So just in summary, I would encourage member states to really look to what already exists in the health sector and in the health context. There's some really good innovations already in place. There's some good guidance already available and a number of mechanisms that can be very useful in this context. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. I think particularly, what you mentioned, the biomonitoring and maybe other indicators related to health will be important then to also see the effectiveness of the treaty's implementation in the future. Great. There's a lot of women speaking today, and a man just left the room. So please, men here in the room, I will come to you. You will get the microphone. You can think of questions or interventions to make. Before we do that, we will go to another expert here, who is a woman, a fantastic woman. And it's Ana Paula de Souza, who works for the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I would ask you also to introduce yourself, please, with your title. And my question to you as an expert on human rights is, what is the link between plastics and human rights? Is there one? And if so, what is it?
Not only one, but many. My name is Ana Paula Souza. I'm a human rights officer at the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and been following this process, the INC, since its very beginning. Thank you. And you are doing such a great moderation that I'm like, need to keep this in mind when we organize another event. Just as I think, maybe I should just wanted to start by saying that last year I was part of scientific experiment. I was part of a contact group that was checking what is the level of exposure to some chemicals, hazardous chemicals that leach from plastics. They were analyzing around 73 of those. And my results shows that I was exposed to about 30 plus of those. And those are chemicals that are endocrine disrupted. They cause neurotoxicity, affect my immune system and so on. And if I was exposed, I'm sorry to say that probably you all are also exposed, because I live a very ordinary life here in Geneva, and I'm not working on recycling. I'm not based next to a petrochemical facility, and so on. So there are people that are in situations even worse than that. And I've been exposed, and you too, without our consent, and there is no way. I have been learning a lot from Jane and other scientists of ways that plastics leach into food, but there is no way. We live in a world, there is no way just by walking on the street you're already being exposed to. So we have been advocating from the very beginning that this is a treaty that should protect the right to health and the right to a healthy environment. And how do you do that? You achieve that by having an ambitious treaty. If you have an ambitious treaty that is going to phase out all those nasty chemicals they are making us sick, that is going to advance the right to health and the right to a healthy environment, amongst others, also the right to food and the right to food, the right to water, and so on. So, but this is not only me here saying that. We start back in 2021 on the Special Rapporteur on Toxic and Human Rights submit a report to the General Assembly on looking at all the life cycle of plastics has human rights impacts. From that, we jumped, like we have then 2022, the UNEA resolution. Then in 2023, a group of 30 plus states did a joint statement at the Human Rights Council saying that the impacts of plastics on human rights is undeniable. That's pretty much the main message that those 30 plus states said at the council. Jumping to 2023, in 2023, jumping to 2024, there was a resolution, a decision of the council that mandated the advisory committee, which is kind of a think tank of the Human Rights Council, to prepare a report on the human rights impact of the whole life cycle of plastics. And that is something that the advisory committee is currently undertaking the preparation of this study. And then this year, we have just in March 2025, states by consensus have adopted a resolution at the Human Rights Council. Switzerland was one of the core group of that resolution on the right to a healthy environment that actually recognizes that the impact of plastic pollution in the whole life cycle of plastic pollution on human rights, and also, of course, recognizing also that there are disproportionate impacts on certain groups, but also referring to microplastics. So I think that is a really interesting process, and we need to do more to link what is happening in the council, in the Human Rights Council, what is happening at WHA, what is happening at ILO, with all the work on occupational health and hazards and BRS and so on. If you look at all the evidence, it's showing just that. Plastics are harmful to people, to the environment, and therefore they are harmful to you, like they have severe impacts on human rights. And with that, I hope your methodology is working on the reverse Q&A.
I think
and
it's
I have
fabulous.
not taken much space, so
yes.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, now I have a lot of questions, but I will hold back on those because I think that maybe you, dear audience, have a couple of questions. I see there's a man already raising his hand. Two, great. Good, let's give the men the microphone now. And also, Ellen, please let me know if there's anyone online. Online audience, please also ask your questions, put them in the chat. And I have Ellen here who will help. Okay. We'll take you first, then you, and then the ladies back there. Great. Please introduce yourself and then ask your question, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this great event and amazing presentations, insightful contribution from experts. And I'm Jérôme Bellion-Jourdan. I come from the world of diplomacy. And I now run an initiative which we call Global Negotiation Support for an institute based in Zurich, and the Institute for Global Negotiation, to provide support to chairs, facilitators of UN and other global negotiation processes. So typically, trying to engage also with the chair of the INC, but also other negotiations to see what is it that can be done better to mobilize the toolbox of what negotiation offers us to do in terms of formats, in terms of techniques, and also to be creative in the way we engage in negotiations. I mean, coming from the world of negotiation, I've seen also the usual formats, and sometimes when the usual formats don't necessarily work, the question is, what is it that we can do differently? So from the viewpoint of our panel, but also experts in the room, I would love to hear some views on what is it that you see in terms of dynamics of this negotiation, in terms of what is it that could be done differently for the Geneva round to be a success. And I do think that we cannot afford a headline, Geneva failed. I do believe that there is an opportunity to get to success, but what is it that can be done from the viewpoint of the negotiation dynamics to get to formats of negotiations and dynamics conclusive to an agreement on the 14th of August? Thank you.
Thank you, Jérôme, for that question. And I can already tell with my experience as observer in this process, you would make a good negotiator because you have a nice voice. I think that's one of the criteria, right, Andrea? Okay, good. Next question, please introduce yourself.
Second man in a row. I hope you're prepared for that.
No, I wanted that.
Okay, I have a very basic question, because certainly the people in the room are very interested in the topic, but not everybody is an expert on plastic, and I'm a very lay person. You have spoken...
Could you introduce yourself,
very well.
Great.
Gianluca Burci, I'm a Geneva Graduate Institute, but previously WHO for many years. If somebody can give a quick explanation, what is in the draft treaty? Because you've spoken about everything except what the text says and what are the main problems.
Okay.
If I'm the only lay person in the audience, I give up.
I think it's a fair point. I mean, it's not quick because there's 26 articles, I think. And actually the one on health, which is Article 19, isn't even in there. So there's just a placeholder right now.
But if I may, I have a second point about conflict of interest, because obviously it's a big, big topic. And you mentioned the experience of WHO, the Tobacco Convention. In a way, the Tobacco Convention was easy because it targeted one product and it was relatively easy to identify the enemy, so to speak. But when it goes in more uncharted territory, it's not black and white. It's try to manage, to disclose and manage possible conflicts. In WHO, we experience it all the time. For example, on access to medicine, people working for industry. So we have to be very careful not to turn this into kind of crusade against the possible enemy, but realistic assessment, because you don't want to give up good experts because they may have worked for a plastic company in the past.
Good.
So, yeah.
That's a fair point. And you got 2 questions, but still we'll go on to the ladies back there. That's what happens when you give men the microphone, right? Yeah. They ask 2 questions. Okay, ladies here in the back, please, or in the front. Yeah. Another question, and then you can already think about. And Albert, are you still online? You can. I think the first question may also be for you, Albert. Yeah. Okay.
So, hi, my name is Sarah Hitchman, and this is my colleague Cheryl Wright, and we're from the WHO FCTC, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And I apologize if I'll first start with a comment and then pass the mic to my colleague on industry interference. So first, we just want to talk about recent examples and potential synergies, which came from a decision of our 10th conference of our parties. And that urged parties to coordinate their efforts to address plastic waste of tobacco products, including cigarette filters and related electronic devices with the objectives of the WHO FCTC. And so in relation to national policies and international treaties dealing with plastics and hazardous waste. We also just want to point out that there is a report going to the 157th session of the WHO Executive Board, which includes recommendations specifically on cigarette filters, which are made of plastic. And this says that banning filters to reduce the palatability and appeal of cigarettes, remove consumer misconceptions about filters substantially reducing health harms, and reduce a major source of toxic tobacco waste, including the microplastics deposited by cellulose acetate in filters. So we're just going to really highlight that important recommendation that's coming from a report that will be presented to the Executive Board. And now probably what you're mostly interested in is industry interference. I'll give the mic to my colleague, Cheryl.
That was great, thanks. That was very helpful. I hope we can get a copy of that report when it comes out. That would be very useful. Great, okay.
Yes, thanks, Sarah, and hello to the experts, because we're all experts, right? Based on what the moderator has indicated earlier. So I'm happy that there is already an appetite for looking at the experience of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And I'm happy that it was mentioned so that it's not so difficult for us to break it here. Just to reiterate the fact that, the this particular aspect of the treaty that deals with conflict of interest is embedded in Article 5.3, which is often regarded as the backbone of the treaty. And therefore, as you look at your own convention, this will be a critical part of it. Any principle or provision that deals with the management of the industry will often end up being the backbone of the treaty. So Article 5.3, for instance, by virtue of that, parties recognize that it's not just a public health measure, right? It is also a good governance measure. It's an anti-corruption measure, and it's a transparency measure, because it does require that parties, for instance, disclose certain things, and it does help to hold parties accountable in terms of their interaction with the industry. And I'm happy to mention from what the goodly gentleman mentioned earlier, that we also recognize that commercial and vested interests of the tobacco industry are not represented only through the tobacco industry, but through various industries, simply because, as it relates to Article 5.3, we recognize that commercial and other vested interests are all around the place. So, we just need to bear that in mind, even as we speak about the accountability that is required under this conflict of interest provision or measure.
Wonderful, Cheryl. Thank you so much. So basically, to summarize your comment, tobacco is maybe simple on the surface, but when you go into the details, it's a bit more complicated. Okay, great. So those were 4 excellent contributions. Turning back to my panelists here. Albert, would you like to start addressing some of the comments and questions that you heard? If you're still awake. I know it's quite late in the Philippines now. Or maybe not so late, huh? 7 in the evening. And in case you're speaking already, we can't hear you. I can see that your mute button is still on. Yeah? Okay. Maybe we'll turn to Andrea. Would you like to give us your response, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
And in case Albert will unmute,
just jump
so
in.
let me know.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you very much for the excellent questions. I tried to answer the first 2 questions quickly, or as quick as possible. So about the dynamics, how to change the dynamics, what kind of what is needed to be in another position at INC 5.2. I think that's a really great question, and I think no one has like the final answer on that. But what we believe is that at INC 5 there has been a change in the dynamics already. As I've mentioned before, I think that was really the first time that we saw a broad group of countries standing up and really clearly underlying what are the key elements they need to see in a final treaty text. And I think this was really like a momentum, and I think we need to continue this momentum. And what we can see is also, as we are in the intersessional period now, right? So before the next round of negotiation, a lot is happening. Like countries are working quite hard, making outreach, having discussions with each other to again enhance the common understanding, try to find common ground and landing zones. And I think it's really key when coming to Geneva that each country knows exactly what they want, what they can still accept, but also what they can't accept, right? So I think it's clear that we don't want to have just a waste management treaty. So we really need a treaty with legally binding measures across the full life cycle of plastics. I think that's key. And try to find again common solutions and moving away from sometimes also older positions and get to real, like starting positive in a positive spirit the negotiations. And to the second question, what is in the draft treaty text? That's a tricky one.
You want to answer it? Otherwise, I would have asked Julia to answer it if it's...
I hand over.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Thanks a lot. And just checking, Albert, in case you want to chime in, just do so, please. We're flexible. Okay, Julia, please. What's in the treaty text, and maybe also what are the red lines? To get to the meat of the topic.
So I cannot cover the whole draft right now, but of course give you some glimpse, and thinking, of course, that this should be. Oh, we have Albert. Do you want to give the floor?
Do you want to take the floor, Albert?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you, and we can even see you. Hi.
Yes, thank you so much. Anyways, looking at the outcomes of the negotiations right now, I think what is really important is there is this rallying point among the governments, among parties, member states, with civil society organizations coming in as partners, and some of the business sector. So there is this advocacy for a treaty that should prioritize environmental protection, human health, and of course, very important is equity, which should be present in all multilateral environmental agreements. So there was, my personal observation is that there was an emphasis on some of the elements or aspects of the negotiation, like, for example, there's the establishment or the development of transparency. And of course, there should be a process on how to trace chemicals in. There were some concerns on how will the treaty achieve its goals. Like, for example, how can we address the gaps in terms of the targets, the global target, and also how will this aligned with the achievement of the ambition, how this will align with the implementation mechanisms. So it's good also to take note that there was a resounding consensus, or perhaps unity, in terms of calling for a binding reduction targets, especially for virgin plastic productions, which I think was supported by more than 100 countries. As we all know, the root cause of the problem is the unmanaged production of virgin plastics. So, of course, as we all know, looking at the outcome, looking at the text, the chair's text, regarding the draft of the treaty, the Article 19 on health is still, there are two options that I hope there could be some progress in the upcoming INC 5.2, wherein we can work on the options and push forward for a standalone article on health, because as we all know, as well, we're talking right now, forefront in advocating for a global treaty, there should be what you call this major consideration of health. That would also, especially in if you have to refer to the human health in the context of as we also address the concerns on environmental health. So I hope that we can come up with getting all the applicable articles in the treaty, in the draft treaty, and work on a full-blown article on particularly environmental health. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for my on and off connection.
No problem, Albert. We look forward to seeing you in person in Geneva in a few months. Thank you for that. And I'm looking at Jerome. I guess you probably have a few more ideas from your toolbox of negotiations. So that's probably a conversation we can continue afterwards. Julia, do you want to just briefly maybe, because we're sort of running a little bit out of time.
Yeah, I think Albert covered a lot, but I can make a succinct answer to the key parts, at least of what we see that is being called the package lately. Being mindful that the mandate from the UN Environment Assembly resolution, it's what the INC should answer to or respect, is to cover the full life cycle. So in the draft treaty text, there are articles that cover it all from the production stage to the waste management stage. The waste management part is the one where we could say we've seen more agreement among countries, and this hardest part where to find agreement are the one about reduction of production that right now is in Article 6 or supply, Article 3 that is the one that was just presented on chemicals, and then finance, so Article 11 right now. And finally, the last one that I will mention as a key part is what is right now Article 20, which is on the future possibility of the COPs to vote, because if there's only by consensus and unanimity, we can already see how we will get stuck.
Great, thanks. And just briefly, don't put the microphone down yet, conflict of interest. Are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater if we don't allow experts that have financial conflicts of interest to participate in expert working groups, or how do you see it?
Well, I really appreciate the responses or the comment we already have from those who have experience from the WHO, FCTC, and plastic is not tobacco. But there are some techniques from the tobacco playbook that have been used and currently used also by the fossil fuel and plastic industry. And as it has been said, it's a matter of transparency and accountability. So having a system there first to prevent and manage conflict of interest is what's needed. And then we can talk about what's the management looking like. But right now, there's nothing there in the treaty draft text, or in the way that observers can also go to these meetings.
And I think we also have a nice precedent from WHO with the IARC monographs, right, where observers are allowed, but just not allowed to vote in these expert working groups. Good. I'm sure we could keep going for quite a while, but that was a really nice sort of roundup. Looking forward to what's going to happen in August here. And for those who are not experts, the Plastics Treaty negotiations go into the second round of the fifth meeting, because the fifth meeting was not ended in Busan. So we have INC 5.2 that starts on the 5th of August here in Geneva. So you can come back if you're interested now. Good. That takes me actually to the end of our panel. So could I invite you to join me in a round of applause, please, for all our panelists and the experts. Good. And I would like now to welcome Carolyn Deer-Bergbeck from TESS, from the Forum on Trade, Environment and the SDGs. She is the founder and executive director of TESS, and she's also one of our hosts here today. So, Carolyn, welcome to the stage, and please, can you make sense of everything that we have heard now in the last hour and a half, and take us home, please?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. It's really a delight to be here today. And one of the reflections I had in thinking, my job is to provide closing remarks briefly, and then also to pass us over for the activity that we have for the reception. But my main reflection is it's important to step back. And that is to say how significant it is that in the context of a treaty that began very much around concern about plastic pollution in the marine environment, that we have gone on this extraordinary journey in a short time to be focusing on the whole life cycle of plastics and how that contributes to plastic pollution, but also fundamentally to a treaty that has to protect both the environment and human health. And I think today, For me, I think we should never stop to be delighted by the fact that we have wonderful colleagues and experts in government, in civil society, in the scientific community, in IGOs, who are determined to make this issue count in the negotiations. And I think that's something that we really need to ensure, that the objective of human health has clear champions, both among governments and among stakeholders in the scientific community, and health professionals have a key role to ensure that is happening. I would not say it's the most dominant voice now in the negotiations. So anything that we can do to strengthen that voice is really critical. What we've heard from all the speakers today is the importance of having the objective of human health clearly in the treaty's objective, looking for ways that it could be reflected in a particular article, such as Article 19. But also, I think our speakers here have really emphasized that we need to see health considerations reflected in a range of different obligations and provisions throughout the treaty. And in that regard, we've heard about it in relation to chemicals of concern and product design, some of the capacity building that countries may need around health, but also in the reporting and assessment of the treaty's effectiveness and so on. I probably missed something key in that, but you've heard from the experts already on that. But I think the core thing is we know we need to see it in the treaty in a range of different ways in order to have some clear hooks that will help governments. I think what we've also heard today is that we should never underappreciate the importance of champions. And in this respect, I just want to really commend the work of Julia and other NGOs and stakeholders and scientists who've been really trying to put the evidence and the pressure on the table around these issues. We simply wouldn't be talking about them if it wasn't for the work of organizations like yours. And also, I think, realizing that we won't implement it effectively without the work of, again, of stakeholders, scientists, and others providing the information. And I was struck at the beginning by the brilliant film, just thinking how important it is also that we see that there are real stories behind this. So you want a particular national government to act on this. It needs to hear from the local population, understand their concerns, have the right scientific evidence, but then also know what to do. And I guess that's how we fit into all of this, is working out how we can help governments nationally work out what to do, present them with the right evidence, the implications of that for policy making, what they can do, and then I think critically hear where they need to cooperate internationally, otherwise they will fail. And I think that's our task, is really that international cooperation piece. And so in that regard, that's why I'm optimistic about today, because we have such a wide variety of stakeholders and experts committed to that task, recognizing that it will require collaboration. And I guess I would just encourage this ongoing collaboration with the health community, because I think we have evidence, we will need a lot more evidence. We will need evidence that's linked to particular kinds of policy proposals, particular kinds of challenges, and we will need to be able to revise and update and integrate that evidence into policy making over time. So the role of the health community, health professionals, scientists and so on is really, really key. And hearing their voice nationally to put pressure on governments that this issue matters so much. I'm sure I've missed all kinds of important points, but I just wanted to thank again all of the speakers, and for those of you who are joining online. I really want to thank again our colleagues from the University of Portsmouth for that amazing film, and realizing that these sorts of communication needs to take place in so many different forms. And just I thought that was such a powerful film. And then really to thank our colleagues from the Geneva Health Centre here at the Graduate Institute for their collaboration. It's a great thing also with an institute to work with you and connect those dots. And then the last thing, I think my last job here is to invite Dr. Cressida Bauer, who is the Associate Professor in Arts and Sustainability and also the Deputy Director of the Revolution Plastics Institute at the University of Portsmouth. And she's going to introduce an activity that we're going to do at the reception, interactive exercise. Just before I close, in case I missed a core point, the key thing is we have to have human health in the objective of the treaty. We have to make sure the treaty provides hooks for how we do that concretely. And we have to make sure that we engage the health community and expertise in promoting that and also helping implement it. So there, I think, the core messages, right? Super. Okay, thank you all so much. And over to you, Cressida.
Thanks, Carolyn. And you've saved me from having to introduce myself, so we can cut down on a bit of time. And thanks to Tess and the Global Health Centre for and all our participants today, and the audience as well, of course. So the Revolutions Plastic Institute have been following the treaty negotiations since day one, actually, and we've attended all the different INCs. And we've staged various events and exhibitions in collaboration with a diverse range of rights holders and stakeholders, including NGOs, waste picker groups, industry and countries. And we quite often use arts-based methods for research and to communicate our research findings in a kind of appealing, inclusive and engaging way. So the music video that you saw at the beginning is it's a research output for us. So it's the result of sort of extensive surveys and focus groups and participatory mapping exercises in an informal settlement in Nairobi, and then working with local musicians and artists to create the song, the lyrics of the song and the content of the music video to really express in a different way what their lived experience is and what they'd like to see happening in terms of the treaty. For INC3, we worked with a group of waste pickers. I think some people in the audience probably saw the performance. And we use theatre to research their lived experience and then communicate their lived experience and their hopes for the treaty to the country delegates and decision makers who are attending INC3. And for INC4, we worked with industry and NGOs on a game show called Demystifying Reuse, which is about, we realised that there's a lot of confusion around the terms reuse, refill, recycling. So we wanted to help try and define what, look at what the differences in these terms actually are. So we created a kind of game show format to research further and talk to the audience and communicate those ideas across. I'd like to now invite you to participate in, to collaborate on a participatory mapping activity. As we've heard today, there are multiple opportunities to reduce the health risks of plastic products, chemical additives, and plastic breakdown products in the environment. And these opportunities present across the full life cycle of plastics. So we're interested in where you think plastic pollution impacts human health and where you see the opportunities to reduce those impacts. So we've printed out a map of the plastics life cycle. It's upstairs near the refreshments. And we invite you to use stickers. So we've got coloured stickers. If you could use blue to mark where you think the impacts are across the plastics life cycle, health impacts, orange stickers to mark where you think there might be opportunities to reduce those health impacts. If you want to say more, there are some blank sticky labels that you can write on and then stick those on the area of the plastic life cycle that you wish to. You can write straight on the map if you want to. I don't mind. And then there are also some strawberry stickers which represent kind of key, important opportunities to address the human health impacts within the treaty and beyond. In implementation of the treaty. So please come and join us upstairs. If you're just using a sticker is really quick, you can be quite involved, you can discuss it with others, or if you're in a rush, please do just try and pop a few stickers on the plastics life cycle.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.